We now call the meeting to order. If you could please rise if you are able and pay attention to Councilmember Padilla for the invocation.
Thank you, Mayor. This evening, our guest is Reverend Holly Tapley. She is the Disaster Response Coordinator for the Great Plains United Methodist Conference, covering Kansas and Nebraska. A native of Alabama, she served churches in the South for 30 years before joining the Great Plains Conference. Reverend Tapley represents faith-based organizations on the State of Kansas Homeland Security Supervisory Committee, and she became chaplain for the Topeka Fire Department just a few months ago. Reverend, thank you for coming this evening.
Thank you. May we bow together in prayer. Gracious God, creator and sustainer of us all, we thank you. We thank you, Father, for the opportunity to come together as community. A community, Father, who cares. A community, Father, who loves. Thank you for these elective leaders. Pour out your Spirit, Father, upon them as they guide in good stewardship for the best of the people for Topeka. For this time, we honor you and you only. And it is in your name that we do pray. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If we could have our friends, 1, 2. Testing, testing. Okay, I'm pretty loud. Oh, there we go. The microphone felt threatened right there. If we could have our friends that are celebrating Minority Mental Health Awareness Month from Vallejo. Come on, don't be shy. I know most of you, none of you are shy. Come up here. So we are raising awareness to minority mental health, and it's extremely important to understand that different cultures have different ways of dealing with trauma and challenges. And one of the things that you learn as you start digging deeper into the way that most of the cultures that are not Anglo-based work is that we keep things at home. I remember growing up and the challenges, my grandmother, may she rest in peace, she would always tell me, la ropa sucia se lava en la casa, you know, dirty laundry, you wash it at home. And that is some of the things that we, minority cultures typically absorb these things because they don't want to be seen as less than. And when you have that type of challenge because you have microaggressions and things that you deal with on a regular basis, imagine having to deal with the fact that you have a mental health condition and that you need to get some help, but your whole family has taught you that you keep things at home. So how do you reconcile those things? And those things nowadays are not just exclusive for minority families, but we see them also in Caucasian families as well, because mental health does carry a stigma that we will end in our generation with the work of all of us collaborating together. So this month specifically, even though we know that mental health situations transcend all colors and they transcend all socioeconomic backgrounds, we are putting a highlight on the mental health of the individuals of minority communities that feel like they are not able to reach out, to let people know that regardless of the color of your skin, regardless of your socioeconomic status, who you worship, who you love, you are worthy of receiving some support, and that you have partners in our community like Vallejo, and you have other partners in our community like Family Service and Guidance Center if you have children that are able to support you. So this proclamation reads, whereas good mental health is essential to everyone's overall health and well-being, and whereas services are accessible and affordable for those in need in Topeka and Shawnee County, Kansas, with treatment for those individuals with mental health conditions so that they can recover and lead full productive lives, there is significant significant disparities that take place in persons in the racial minority population who are a greater risk for serious mental health problems, such as, for example, higher rates of suicide and reports of serious psychological distress. Therefore, I, Michelle de la Isla, Mayor of the City of Topeka, Kansas, proclaim the month of July 2019 as Minority Mental Health Awareness Month. Bill, would you like to say a few words?
I would. Thank you, Mayor. We always appreciate the support we get from the Mayor's office, the council, taxpayers of Topeka and Shawnee County. There are so many gifts that you give us, and this is one way for us to stand up and say thank you. We have tried very hard in the last 50 plus years at Vallejo to overcome the barriers to behavioral health care, to recovery from mental illness and addiction, physical barriers, financial barriers, personal, racial and cultural barriers that might be out there. And one of the fixes for that is we take our programs out to the street. And I have to tell you that the City of Topeka invests a whole week of training of its police officers at their expense in what's called crisis intervention training. That's a whole week to that tough academy they go through. Makes our police officers safer on the street and others as well. And so, we just thank the city for so many blessings. You fund our detox program. If it wasn't for that, it would not exist. Our crisis intervention program, our co-responder program, where we're able to put a social worker on the street with the police all day, every day, 24 hours a day. So many gifts from the city of Topeka and Shawnee County. We thank you, Madam Mayor.
Excuse me, Mayor, just proud to be part of this, and thank you for this proclamation. It's very important, and as part of the Vallejo Foundation, I would like to extend my thanks to you and all the elected officials for doing this.
Madam Mayor, I'm Tyler Levere, Board of Directors for the Health Center, and your proclamation has said it best. Thank you and the city for your support, and we'll keep fighting the good fight.
Madam Mayor and the team, yes. Frank Henderson, Chair of the Vallejo Behavioral Health Care Board. Thank you for this proclamation. It means a great deal to us, but even more so, we thank you for the collaboration that the city has with Vallejo. We would not be able to take care of the folks the way we do without the support of the city, and also indicate as well for the Topeka Rescue Mission. And the city has been a great supporter working with Vallejo and our mental health needs there as well. So thank you very much. This is greatly appreciated.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you very much.
And staff, let's not forget city manager and the team that helps us, and the fire department and the police department that are instrumental in all of this. The next group that we have up is a little bit bigger than the one that we just had. If I could have our AmeriCorps Vista volunteers come up so that they could be recognized. This is a group, for those of you who don't understand or have heard about the AmeriCorps Vista program, these are individuals that are giving up their time, and they are committed to living with poverty level means, and these individuals come into our community with a specific task. Just come on up, it's picture time. So they are here to do partnerships with a few local organizations, of course, with the city of Topeka. I know that Monique Lade has a lot to do with this program. Monique, if you could please join us. Yes. You cannot escape. They're also going to be supporting Parks and Rec. They're also going to be working at the VA, reading to some of the veterans and being there, providing some support. And they're also going to be working with the library. And they're going to be supporting children and just enriching our community while they are here. They could have certainly chosen any other place in the country to be, because the AmeriCorps program is a national program. We have people here from California. We have people here from all over the nation that have chosen to come and use their gifts and talents for the city of Topeka, really not being compensated much, if any. I just want to say thank you, all of you, for serving our community. I hope that your stay here while you're working with us is just absolutely wonderful. Know that we appreciate your sacrifice, because we know that this is a sacrifice, and we just look forward to the great things that you guys are going to do. I know that somebody wanted to speak, so.
Sure. Thank you so much, Madam Mayor and the rest of the council members for making time on your agenda for this group of young civil servants. And thank you to all the residents for welcoming them into your city from all over the country. So my name is Sarah Like. I serve in the role of Assistant Program Director for AmeriCorps National Civilian Community Corps out of the Southwest region. So Kansas being one of our 9 great states that we serve out of that region. Being awarded a team is a really competitive process. The city of Topeka is only one of 7 teams that we have in the 9 states right now, and the only one in the state of Kansas. So thank you, Monique, for all of the work that you put in and all of the partnering organizations to make this process a wonderful one for our members and for those that are served in the community. A few years ago, Monique and the city of Topeka were awarded our Project Sponsor of the Year award, and that was done through the collaborative and innovative process of bringing together multiple organizations that serve the residents of Topeka to provide them with a greater collective impact, and we're so happy to be a part of that process today and moving forward. So thank you so much.
Since we have people from all over the nation, I would like for you guys to say your name and where you're from.
Hello, my name is Jalen Wallace. I am from Toledo, Ohio.
I'm Elsa Eager, and I am from Fairbanks, Alaska.
My name is Ozzy Stahl, and I'm from Venice Beach, California.
My name is Adam. My name is Adam Schumacher, and I'm from Norwich, Connecticut.
My name is Amber Kennedy. I'm from Southeast Missouri.
My name is Alyssa Gresh, and I'm from Lisbon, Ohio.
My name is Ruth Jeffers. I'm from Winston-Salem, North Carolina.
My name is Warren Nix, and I'm from Tacoma, Georgia.
My name is Jackson Touchbury. I'm from Ypsilanti, Michigan.
And my name is Taylor, and I'm also from Michigan and Grand Rapids.
Please help us welcome these outstanding young individuals that are here to help our community. And a huge thank also, she didn't want to come to the front, but I think that Monique is one of those amazing staff people that we have in our community that is really ingrained in trying to change barriers and create solutions to help in our community. Monique, we so appreciate you. We know that a lot of this is the fruit of your labor, so thank you very much as well.
There's no I in team, and so we are doing this. We have this Sun 5 team, the NCCC team from AmeriCorps. We couldn't do this without our partners. So if our partners would stand up in the back, please. So we're very appreciative for Susan Hensler from the Shawnee County Parks and Recreation Department, Denise Cunningham from the VA Eastern Kansas Health Systems, and Thad Hartman, and Carrie from the Topeka Shawnee County Public Library. Thank you.
We now have 2 presentations. City Manager, I think we're doing now the Neighborhood Watch.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Tonight we want to give you a quick update on the Neighborhood Watch program. If Gretchen, go ahead and come forward. We've been working on this to improve this program, reinvigorate the program. Councilman Padilla, it was on our list as something that we wanted to accomplish through the goals and priorities. And so there's been some progress made, and Gretchen will walk through a presentation that will update you on that.
Governing body, city manager, mayor, thank you so much for the opportunity to present this update to you all. On behalf of the Topeka Police Department, thank you. As city manager mentioned, we wanted to provide an update about the Neighborhood Watch program in Topeka. This was a priority that you all had for this year, and so we're excited to share this news and updates with you all. So for those who don't know much about the Neighborhood Watch program, it's an organized partnership between the community, law enforcement, and Safe Streets. So community members really serve as the eyes and ears for law enforcement in the community. And it goes back to that see something, say something mentality. So neighborhood watches can also be comprised of other components of our community. It could be an NIA, an NA, an HOA, several different options. So when we talk about looking at where the Neighborhood Watch program is and where we hope it can continue to grow to, as I mentioned, this was a priority for this year. So TPD, Safe Streets, PARS, Crime Stoppers, and Councilman Padilla met multiple times over the last couple months, and we really wanted to take a look at what changes we could implement. And so one thing that we really plan to do is to continue to educate the public on this program. We found that there was a lack of knowledge about what the program does in the community, and so that's really where we plan to start. We also plan to create new and fresh branding, and that will also include new signs. So with help from the city's graphics department and Taylor, she came up with multiple designs for signs that we could really roll this thing out and have a new, fresh look to really go along with the 21st century and what we plan to do. So this is the sign that you will now see in a couple months that will be popping up throughout the city. This will replace the existing signs, which are the same size. It's 18 inches by 24 inches. We're just going to go ahead and flip them. And as I mentioned before, the See Something, Say Something is really the branding that we want to come through to the community. Another part is just understanding what the citizens want from this program. And so we have developed a survey that we will be putting out on the city's social media pages, TPD, PARS, Safe Streets, any of our community partners, to really look at, for those who are involved in neighborhood watches, how do they communicate? What is their preferred communication line? Is it picking up the phone and talking to each other? Is it through a Facebook group? Several different options. So we want to figure out how our constituents and community members are communicating, and if there's some ways that we can change and improve those communication strategies. And we also want to encourage people who are not involved in neighborhood watches currently to take this survey to let us know why they aren't involved, and maybe if they would be interested in becoming involved. So on that, if you are not sure if your neighborhood already has a neighborhood watch, you can call Safe Streets at 785-266-4606. And you can also reach out to them to start a neighborhood watch or find out if there's already one in your neighborhood. So do you have any questions?
Do we have any questions on this? Councilman Padilla?
No questions, but just a comment. I want to thank you, Gretchen, for updating the entire council on, because we're all interested in the safety of our community. And I think that it's an active program because it can't just sit there and put up a sign. You have to have people who are really dedicated to trying to keep people safe in this community. Thank you, and Lieutenant Roth, I thought I saw him in here earlier. He's been one of those regular attendees at the meetings, and for Chief Cochran's support of revitalizing this program, because I think there's a lot that can be said for the people who want to take care of their block-by-block community and letting people know what can be done to keep themselves safe. So thank you again for the effort.
Absolutely. Thank you for your time.
Additional comments or questions? Gretchen, thank you so much for your presentation. We now proceed with the roll call.
Mayor De La Isla?
Here.
Council members Hiller? Here. Clear? Here. Ortiz? Here. Emerson? Padilla?
Here.
Jensen?
Present.
Mays?
Here.
Cohen?
Here.
And Lester?
Here.
We now move on to the consent agenda, if the clerk would read.
Okay, staff is requesting that we pull item 4A from the agenda. The event organizer is canceling the event.
Okay.
Okay, B is a resolution introduced by Councilmember Karen Hiller approving a special event known as the 2019 Downtown Adventure Race, Topeka. C is a resolution introduced by Councilmember Karen Hiller granting Let's Help an exception to the provisions of City of Topeka Code Section 945-150 at seat concerning noise prohibitions. D is a resolution introduced by Councilmember Sandra Claire granting Joe Weir an exception to the provisions of City of Topeka Code Section 945-150 at seat concerning noise prohibitions. E is a resolution introduced by City Manager Brent Trout granting various neighborhood organizations exceptions to the provisions of City of Topeka Code Section 945-150 at seat concerning noise prohibitions. F is a resolution introduced by Councilmember Mike Padilla granting Gilbert Palos an exception to the provisions of City of Topeka Code Section 945-150 at seek concerning noise prohibitions. G is an ordinance introduced by City Manager Brent Trout allowing and approving city expenditures for the period of June 1 through June 28, 2019, and enumerating said expenditures therein. H are minutes of the regular meeting of July 9, 2019, and there is one application before you, and staff is recommending approval.
We have heard the consent agenda. Councilmember Lesser makes a motion for approval.
Second.
Councilmember Jensen makes seconds that motion. Are there any comments or questions with regards to the consent agenda? Seeing none, we proceed by voting.
We have 9 yes.
9 having voting yes, the motion passes. We now move on into the action items. We have action item A. The clerk would read.
A is a public hearing on the advisability of adopting a project plan for the Sherwood Crossing TIF District and an ordinance introduced by City Manager Brent Trout adopting a redevelopment project plan for the Sherwood Crossing Redevelopment District pursuant to KSA 12-1770 at SEEK as amended.
City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Governing body, tonight I'm excited to talk about the consideration of approval of the Sherwood Crossing project plan for the TIF district. At this time, Deputy City Manager Doug Garber will cover some information related to the request before we hear from the developer.
Governing body, good evening. As the city manager noted, we are, item 5A is talking about approval of the TIF project plan. I feel like we've talked about this 6 or 7 times, and I think that's because we have talked about it 6 or 7 times. I was actually just looking at Councilwoman Hiller's stack of stuff related to these items, and there's been a lot of information presented. But very briefly for you, as you know, we started with a number of discussions about this. The TIF statutory process is a two-pronged process whereby we establish the district. Then we, once that's done, then we're able to move forward with the project plan establishment. That goes through a discussion with us as well as a planning commission discussion to make sure it's compatible with our comprehensive plan. We set a public hearing, and we are arrived at that point where we are asking for tonight for you to hold a public hearing and then subsequently adopt the redevelopment project plan for this district at 29th and Wanamaker. I'm glad to answer any questions you might have, and I noticed that where they disappeared to, but Dave and Ferd and the team are here, Bruce, so I'm sure they could answer any specific questions as well.
So prior to discussion, if the body would like to first hear the individual signed up for public comment. The first person signed up for public comment is Mr. David Christie.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, thank you for the opportunity to appear. We just wanted to let you know that we sincerely appreciate your hard work, the staff, and it's just been they've worked tirelessly to get this project teed up, to look at it, to make corrections, say this is not, this is not what we want to do, let's go this direction, and let's get the city council educated on what it's going to take to make this project successful. So we feel like we're there. You all have been wonderful. We've met with many of you individually and feel really excited about this project. So this is our second project here in a relatively short period of time, and hope to do a third very quickly. So just wanted to let you know we really appreciate it. It's you all serve very hard and very tirelessly your community and the patrons of this city, and we do appreciate it. So I just wanted to thank you.
Thank you very much. This is a public hearing item, so at this point in time, we will open up the public hearing so that not only the individuals who have signed up to speak are able to do so, but also if there is any individual who is in the crowd that would like to speak to this item, you are able to do so at this time. The other person that signed up to speak previously was Mr. Ferd Neiman.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, thanks for having us again. Ferd Neiman with 29th Street Partners. Just want to echo Dave's comments about being pleased that we've been able to get through this process. I know it's been kind of arduous along the way, but we're looking forward to the next steps and getting this project underway. And I don't have a lot to say tonight other than if you have specific questions of Dave or me, I'll try to answer what I can. I think I've answered most of the questions and concerns either individually or in front of this body, but here again to do so if I can. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other individuals in the public that would like to speak to this issue? Any other individuals that would like to speak to this issue? This is your opportunity to speak on this issue, should you choose to. I have to do it 3 times, friends. By protocol, so when you see me repeating myself, now you know what I'm doing. So seeing no other individual interested in speaking on this issue, the public hearing is closed, but we are open now to discussion from the body on this ordinance. Councilman Cohen. We have a motion for approval by Councilmember Cohen, a second by Councilmember Lesser. Additional comments or discussions on this item? Seeing none, we proceed by voting.
We have 9 yes.
9 having voting yes, the motion passes. We now move on to item B, if the clerk would read.
B is an ordinance introduced by City Manager Brent Trout concerning affordable housing and the Topeka Housing Trust Fund, amending City of Topeka Code Sections 2105010 and 2105070, and repealing original sections.
City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight, governing body, we're going to discuss the creation of a usable housing trust fund ordinance. This was a priority of the Affordable Housing Task Force and is one of the first items that we're looking at trying to accomplish from the task force priorities. After much discussion and many revisions of the ordinance, it is now ready for the governing body to consider for approval, and I stand for any questions that you may have.
Before we enter discussion again, if it would be okay with the council body, we have individuals signed up to speak on this item. Would it be okay if we start with the public comments? Thank you very much. The first person signed up to speak is Ms. Joyce Revley.
Good evening. My name is Joyce Reevely. I am actually here on behalf of my neighbor, Ann Gillian, who is part of Topeka Jump. She's a member of Temple Beth Shalom, and those who advocate strongly for decent, affordable housing options. We know each other through our work in the Tennessee Town NIA. Ann has had a medical procedure scheduled today and was given strict doctor's orders not to attend this evening, even though she really wanted to. So I'm going to read her testimony as it's written. When I was 50 years old, I was pulled out of the workforce rather abruptly due to a health condition. When my primary source of means is Social Security disability. I live at the Tennessee Town Apartments, which is a form of public housing under the Topeka Housing Authority. While I am very grateful to the Housing Authority for my home, I am increasingly uncomfortable living there. The environment is isolated and intrusive. I understand why the inspections are necessary. However, as a senior, I have more comfortable and dignified hopes for the place I call home. I've been encouraged to buy a home, but I am at a time in my life where you downsize, not upgrade. I do not want the responsibility of lawn care or cleaning a big house. I just want a simple space, freedom, and friendly, lively neighbors. I've tried to find that, but I've been unsuccessful. I've put in my time, I invested in the system, and I still contribute to our society. Don't I deserve a decent, affordable housing option that is not public housing? Guess what? That's a real thing. Other communities do it. Having a regular home to rent at a rate comparable to your income is not a new concept. That's what I want, and that's what I deserve. Projects funded by the Housing Trust Fund should build the types of homes I aspire to live in. It can build the types of homes young professionals can afford early on as well. We need this. Thank you in advance for your affirmative vote. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. The next person signed up to speak is Ms. Wendy Wells. Seems like Ms. Wells is not here. Next person signed up to speak is Mr. Clark Trammell.
I respectfully pass.
Okay, so we have the ordinance in front of us. This has been an ordinance that we have been discussing for a while. So we're open for discussion. Oh, Ms. Wendy Wells just arrived. Ms. Wendy Wells, you were signed up for public comment.
Timing is everything. Wendy Wells, President of U.S. Bank. Sorry I didn't get to hear the dialogue in advance. I'm a little out of breath. I really wanted to just speak on behalf of the Topeka Housing Trust Fund. U.S. Bank is very involved in trust funds across the United States. I'm gonna have to work out more. Out of breath. And we have experience in working with organizations such as this to provide housing. You know, one of the things that we've observed across the United States when we've been involved in these trust funds is that when you wait until you're fully developed, you're too late. And so acting at this early stage can be really instrumental in making sure that there's proper housing for everyone in the community. And, you know, you can read a lot of the publications and understand that part of the issue is when you get popular, it's too late because real estate is too expensive, and finding people at all income brackets is critical to an organization and a town to thrive, because we need all levels of income and all levels of housing in order to have a productive community. And the Topeka Jump Group and I have been visiting on a regular basis, and I'm in support of what they're trying to accomplish. And they qualify for funding through our foundation. We have 4 pillars at U.S. Bank for our foundation, which is a national foundation. And one of the pillars is called Home. And that Home pillar is designed to provide funding for exactly the purpose that this trust is trying to accomplish. So I'm really here just to give you some level of confidence that this is something that is known by our organization, and that we are going to provide some funding to support it. And I would just look to you all to give it some serious consideration, you know, just for our future in Topeka. Thoughts, questions? I'm not really well prepared, but that's from the heart.
Thank you for your comments, Ms. Wells.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Hiller has a question for you.
Yes.
Oh, well, no. So, okay, so we're ready for open discussion. Councilwoman Hiller.
But I'll have a comment to follow her out. What a wonderful way to kick off a housing trust fund. How exciting, and thank you, U.S. Bank. I'm the person from the council that's worked, at least most recently, a lot with the Jump folks to see if we couldn't hammer out some language that, oh, I'm sorry. I'm the person from the council that's worked the most recently with the Jump folks to see if we couldn't hammer out some final language that we thought would suit Jump as well as the city. I'm very excited to see what's in front of us today. I do think that the city staff and others that have worked with Jump on this There's been a lot of talk about what the board, how the board should be comprised. Jump was wanting to make sure that there was language in here that emphasized their interest in assisting very low-income people, not to cut anybody out if there was a good idea, but to target very low-income folks as a priority. And at least in my opinion, all that language is in there. And so I will have just one amendment that doesn't have to do with the substance of the ordinance, but if it's okay, I would be happy to first move to approve the ordinance.
We have a motion for approval, and we have a second by Councilmember Jensen. Councilwoman Hiller, you said you had an amendment?
Just one amendment, and that would be on lines 237 to 239. It has to do with who would do the final approval of any allocations from the fund. Right now, the language says that once it's gone through the process, it would go to the city manager, and that the city manager alone would make the final decision. For a variety of reasons, I think it's important that the city manager deliver that recommendation to the council and that the council makes the final decision. So this suggestion there is simply to substitute for one sentence. So it would say the city manager shall review the recommendation and may return it to the committee for further review at such time as the city manager feels the proposal is ready for action. The city manager shall forward the proposal to the governing body with a recommendation. The decision of the governing body shall be final. And I would move that amendment.
Deputy Mayor?
Yes. Why? You said there were several reasons. Can you give me a couple?
I think it's important to the public that there be transparency in the process. What we've got is a housing trust fund that will be managed by our neighborhood relations staff and advised largely by other affordable housing providers, all of which I personally think is a great structure because that's who would be knowledgeable about the options in the community, about the strength of partners, the various things. If you've read through this, this ordinance goes through a lot of detail in identifying how the priorities would be evaluated, how the proposals would be evaluated, and so on. And so the team is very internal with the advocacy of Jump. There have been 3 switches in that someone recommended by the mayor and this council from the Affordable Housing Network, as well as someone from the Poverty Advocacy Network, would also sit on that board. But because the city is managing it, if it doesn't come to the council at least once, the council might never know that the process was occurring, nor would the public. So there's that. The other thing is, it's very important. I've visited with people that have been involved in trust funds otherwise, and the issue is we want to make sure that that transparency and visibility is there to make sure that the donors are willing to donate as well. And that, to me, is the most important. Those donors being large donors such as US Bank, but also let's say that Jump put together a campaign whereby they were wanting to raise X amount of money to go into rehab of homes and so on. That involvement of the council is sort of the seal of the good housekeeping seal of approval that it's been seen. The choice as this thing emerged was that it would stay with the city rather than be independent, that it be a city housing trust fund. And so having it come by the council at least once before awards are made. The third thing is that it's possible that there would be awards of $5,000 or $500 coming out of this. If that was the case, if that was part of a series for home repair and so on, the council could approve it once. They don't need to be involved in every single little grant that would go out. But there's also the potential that as much as $5 million at a time could go through this fund. That's a lot of money. And so making sure that it's made one pass through the council so that we are aware and the public is aware seemed important.
So for protocol purposes, we have on board a motion. We need a second to continue the discussion. For the amendment. We have a motion and a second for the ordinance. We need a motion and a second. So thank you, Councilmember Lesser, for your second. We may continue discussion. Deputy Mayor.
What I think, I mean, there's a lot of hands in here already. There's a lot of people this is going to go through. And I don't think this is something we need to put on the governing body's plate. Because to me, it's just micromanaging. I think if the citizens want to know about it, they can go online. There's a lot of people involved. The bank's involved, there's a committee involved, the city manager's involved. Now, if it was just city manager and this money, I think that would be a different story. But there's already a lot of people involved, and I don't think it needs to go through the body. Thank you.
Councilman Jensen.
If I might offer replacement that follows the same lines you're looking for. I agree with the deputy mayor in that this seems like it's an awful lot of micromanaging, especially if we're going to try and review every single grant. My counteroffer would be to put it on the consent agenda. That gets pushed out very publicly. We have the option to review it and pull it off the consent agenda if we so choose, but at least it puts it on everyone's radar. But yet, at the same time, we routinely just approve the consent agenda, which would be essentially blessing the decisions of the city management team. I mean, think of how we do that with city expenditures now. So if you're looking for the transparency aspect, I think that could qualify for that. It could bring it to the attention of the council on a regular basis without it requiring us to debate. And then, again, I know that gets emailed out to a large number of people. So I would offer that as a substitute substitute amendment, if that would be approved.
Let me,
Councilwoman Hiller.
if I could suggest, I think that's a great suggestion, but I also don't think it belongs here because it's the choice of the city manager and the team where things go on the agenda anyway. And so imagining that it would go through that, go on the consent agenda, I think is fine. Yeah, I didn't put it on there with an intent that there'd be a debate, and I know that there have been people who've been concerned that it shouldn't go through the council for that reason, but we usually approve things that have been worked by a committee unless there's concern about them, in which case we're the ones on the hook for what decision got made and the fact that city resources were used to manage it or implement it. And so at least that's a checkpoint. So I think that's a great idea, but I'm not sure that it wouldn't be over detailing the ordinance itself to add that language. Makes sense.
If I can respond. So where did you envision it going on the agenda then? Because generally items that are put on the agenda are up for discussion one week followed by decision the following week, whereas things specifically targeted by the consent agenda are generally approved unless there's further concern.
Councilwoman
Hiller. Ask me a question. I didn't think about it, honestly, but we could put this, and what I'm hopeful is that there's something in that we're creating a box. We have to create a box that's appealing enough that people put something in the box and we even deal with it. So I hadn't gone that far, but I think it's just fine to go on the consent agenda as well as to consider that for other items that we think are just going to ping right through.
So would you accept my substitute amendment then?
I think it's procedural that it doesn't belong here, but legal might.
Lisa?
As mayor and governing body members, this would not be something that's going to amend this particular document. Exactly. I think if you wanted something like this to be placed on the consent agenda, perhaps making that a directive to the city manager that all types of grants that are run through this and approved through this are just placed on the consent agenda, just make that a directive for him.
So your motion wouldn't?
It would be much more of an operational rule rather than something specific to this item. We don't classify other things that we do by where they should go on the agenda.
City manager.
Okay, I'm not quite understanding.
I think as far as what you're proposing, as far as the place to put it on the agenda, it's good to hear that. I think that given the exhaustive review that will have gone through by the 9-member committee, there really isn't a need to have a debate, and hopefully we would avoid the debate from the standpoint of you have appointed members. And that's really the reason that I looked at it being approved at my level, was that a couple of the members are even appointed by you. Only 3 staff members out of the 9 are people that are part of my staff. So it very much has to go through a various group of people that would agree that it's something worth funding. So therefore, I would look at it saying, if all of those people feel it's worthwhile to fund, then I would approve it, and there wasn't a need to go back to the governing body. I can tell you that this has been an ongoing debate with Councilmember Hiller and I from the beginning of this process, and that's fine. It's been a very honest, we both known each other's positions, and so, but that's the reason that I looked at it, being that the process that we would follow to grant approval would have been through a committee of 9, and felt like that wasn't necessary to come back to the governing body. But obviously, whatever decision you make, we'll follow through. And if you want it approved by the governing body, I think consent agenda is the place that I would put it.
Okay, so at this point in time, we do have a motion for an amendment. So if there's no other questions, we would vote on the amendment at this time. Councilwoman Ortiz.
Thank you. I just have a quick comment here. JUMP has been around for a long time, and they have contacted all of us, and they've made it very loud and clear what they need, what they want, and I commend them for that. And I think it's all of our duties to make sure that we take this trust fund and we grow it. It's all of our responsibility. And I kind of agree with Karen, because everything that the city manager has to do, I don't worry about unless there's a problem and it comes back here. And I know some people see it as, well, he's got his whole staff on that. So, kind of like the hen watching over the hen house or whatever they say it is, And so that's kind of why I would like to see it come back, just so we can keep up on it and people will be comfortable with talking to different council members, and not just him. Because if they disagree with him, they're not going to be like Karen and pound it into the wall. I mean, I'm sure the city manager will be glad when this is over with, but, there's people out there that feel comfortable with one of us. So I will agree with her that it comes back to us. And, we're just getting more and more away from taking our responsibilities and looking at this. And so I want to keep up with it. I'm sure the JUMP people will hold me accountable in doing that. But at the same time, if it's the city managers, if he's doing it, I'm probably going to say, well, just talk to him. And I think we need to really, really look at that. It's just another one of our duties. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you so much. Deputy Mayor?
Have a clarification. So if we vote on this, then it's not stated anywhere that it would go on the consent agenda. It's just understood.
Correct. We, as the council body, could give the city manager a directive that every time that there is an approval for an item, that it goes on the consent agenda. Because we don't set the agenda with the city manager. So as long as we let them know after this passes that the mode that it's going to occur is by putting it in the consent agenda, then he has his marching orders.
So this doesn't it doesn't say action or consent?
No,
or,
no.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Having had the discussion, I think we proceed now with the voting for the amendment.
We have 8 yes, Mr. Cohen voting no, so the motion passes.
8 having voting yes, the motion passes. At this point in time, what we have in front of us is the ordinance as amended. We have a motion and we have a second. Do we have additional discussion on this item? Seeing none, we proceed by voting.
We have 9 yes, motion carries.
Motion carries. I just want to take a moment to say thank you to the crew of JUMP, who has been working with us for a long time. so that we could see this happen in our community. Now, this does not mean by any means or a stretch of the imagination that we're done with this work. We have the tool. Now we have to figure out the funding. And this is something that we will do together. I want to thank U.S. Bank Wendy Wells for being a leader from the private sector that has experience in these processes, for coming here today and standing up. And I want to thank all of you for your advocacy for those in need. We have done some amazing things as a team, sometimes easy, like Neto and Soto, sometimes a little bit more difficult like this one. But I want to thank all of you for your engagement. Thank you. You guys are infectious. So, in a good way. We now move on to item C in the agenda, if the clerk would read.
C is an ordinance introduced by City Manager Brent Chapp concerning adoption of the 2015 Uniform Mechanical Code and local amendments amending City of Topeka Code sections 1450, 010, 020, and creating sections 1450, 115, 215, 255, and 285.
City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight, we're going to move to the action phase of the Uniform Mechanical Code. Richard Faulkner presented a review of the need to update our Uniform Mechanical Code to the 2015 version and presented the local changes that we're requesting to that. Staff seeks approval and is prepared to answer any questions you may have.
We have heard from the City Manager. Do we have any? Yeah, Deputy Mayor.
Move to approve.
We have a motion for approval by the Deputy Mayor, a second by Councilmember Jensen. Do we have any other questions with regards to this? Seeing no comments or questions, we proceed by voting. We're clearing the board? We have to vote again.
Motion to approve.
We have 9 yes.
9 having voting yes, the motion passes. We now move on to item D, if the clerk would read.
D is an ordinance introduced by City Manager Brent Trout concerning backflow prevention and cross-connection control, amending City of Topeka Code Sections 563-080, 1435-490, 1435-510 through 550, 570, and 580, and repealing original sections.
City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight, we also have one additional item that Mr. Faulkner discussed, and that is an ordinance change that's proposed that will place the responsibility for the water backflow program underneath Development Services. Staff is available if there are any questions.
Any questions from the body? Deputy Mayor?
Move to approve.
We have a motion for approval.
Second.
We have a second by Councilwoman Hiller. Any questions or comments? Seeing no questions or comments on this item, we proceed by voting.
Okay, we have 8 yes.
8 having voting yes, the motion passes. At this moment, we move on to item E, if the clerk would read.
E is approval of the 2020 Social Services Grant Allocation Recommendations in the amount of $434,904.
I'll recognize Councilmember Cohen as chair.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a reminder, I was the chair of this committee this year, and we had a process put together last year for our committee, and we went through the process, and all of the applications were scored. All of the applications were scored, and all of the grant recommendations were made, and we sent the recommendations to the council, and the council referred it back to the committee, and the committee is met, and there were no changes at the committee. We remanded it back to the council. So at this time, I think I'd like to turn it over to Councilman Padilla.
Councilman Padilla.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Councilman Cohen. This has been an interesting process for me because during the process I turned 70 years old. So I'm a senior citizen and probably somebody who would use those services at a senior center. That's not why I wanted to remand it back to the committee, though. You know, we listen to a lot of the good things that happen in this city, and it's really invigorating. It's really something that I'm glad I've been able to be a part of. My fellow council members have helped bring a lot of these things about, and people before us sitting on this council have brought a lot of these things before us. The diversity of the input that we receive on almost every decision we make is something that can't be taken lightly. We talk about how we serve our community from the cradle to the grave and what we do in between those years, that dash in between those years, from the time we're born and the time we die, and where we live and how we live in the community that we live in, how it represents and respects every one of us. In this process, I felt personally, and I know that there might be some who would call this politicizing this effort, but I don't think it's politicizing when you talk about helping people. And in this process that was set forth, all the numbers were counted and all the boxes were checked, except for some of the applicants. And because of the loss of a couple points, those services fell below a mark that changes for these agencies. And it's difficult for me as an individual and as a council member to think in terms of whether or not an agency is doing good by just the numbers that they present. I think sometimes we get a little focused on a process rather than the purpose of what we do. And it is my hope that recognizing the hard work that was done by the staff and the hard work that was done by my fellow committee members to look at this with an open mind, but also as a lesson in looking at things more closely so that if there are other opportunities or other ways to get a job done, then we do that. So, in addition to the report that Councilman Cohen has provided, I would like to make a motion and an amendment to the recommendation, if I may. And I'll read this, and it's been passed to my fellow council members. Understanding that I'm not seeking to increase a budget, but I'm seeking work for people to think hard and for people to look at what they can do to help us, provide assistance to those members of our community, the senior citizens, who have, for the most part, led probably most of their lives here in Topeka, have earned a living, paid taxes, probably own property, sent their kids to school here in this community, and as they get older in life, things change, and it's harder for them to socialize, to talk with their fellows, to become even more active in their community at the later stages in their life, but we have to keep them in mind. We have to keep them in mind as much as we keep our youth in mind. We all start out young, but if the plan goes well, we all end up old. So my amendment, if I would like to propose, is that I make a motion requesting that the city manager review funding levels at the conclusion of the 2019 and during 2020 to determine if sufficient resources are available to fund the 4 social service agencies that were unable to secure grants through the Social Services Grant Committee process in an amount not to exceed $40,000. And if so, to include this funding as part of the year-end budget ordinance. These 4 agencies are specifically Lulat Senior Center, Pappin's Landing Senior Center, East Topeka Senior Center, and Community Actions Latino Family Development Program. And each would receive an amount not to exceed $10,000 if such funding can be secured. That is my motion, Madam Mayor.
We have a motion and a second. At this point, before we go into deliberations, I would like to invite the individuals that have signed up to speak on this item. The first individual is Ms. Frances Dieters.
Hi, I'm very much a senior advocate, because like you said, we're all going to get there. You know, I want to say that some of these seniors, it's the only socialization they get. The senior centers provide transportation to and from their medical appointments. They provide medical transportation, activities. All 3 senior citizens are Meals on Wheels meal site. They get to go and eat with somebody at least once a day during the week. Who wants to eat alone? I don't want to eat alone. They get to go there and eat with someone. They can't operate without funding. They have to have our help. They have lived in our community. They've raised their families. They've paid taxes. You know, they're our citizens. They still vote. They still want to be active. They don't want to just sit home in the rocking chair in front of the TV, nobody to talk to, nowhere to go. Some of these folks wouldn't even get out of their house if it wasn't for the senior centers. You know, Mayor, you came and talked to a place that I work for seniors, and you said you were an advocate for seniors. So I just ask you guys today to consider these folks really need your funding. So please vote to give them a chance and vote for them, please. Thank you.
The next person signed up to speak is Michelle Cuevas Stubblefield.
Good evening. I come to you today as a private citizen, part of District 1. I basically want to say Topeka is a caring community. Topeka, there is a saying that goes, to care for those who once cared for us is one of the highest honors. The grant funding available is an example of that commitment and the care that should be provided and has been provided in the past. With this in mind, it looks like the process to allocate funding is flawed and has interrupted the purpose over the process. I would contend this is evident that the fact that all 4 senior centers were denied funding due to the grant process. This is not just a coincidence, but a result of the lack of equity in the process. No one challenges the purpose of the senior centers or the work that they have provided, just simply that they didn't score well on the test. One of the primary purposes of funding available is for senior care. All the senior centers have a long and known history for providing quality of services that are valued and needed. These services are both a quality of life, a quality of care for our seniors and the community, and for their families. It is a point of safety and economic issues and security as well. Due to the flaw in the grant process, I would simply ask that you would make some adjustments in the 2020 funding to ensure our senior citizens and our senior centers receive the much needed funding, and prior to the next grant offering, that the grant process be reviewed. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Mr. Clark Trammell?
Good evening. A lot of what I was going to say has been said by the previous two speakers, and I just want to add my voice to the collective comments that are coming to you. And I don't think they were unexpected. I think you all knew somebody would present that because I think you're all feeling that way. I would say to Councilman Padilla, I appreciate the heart you put on this and the amendment that you've offered. I just have a procedural question. I'm wondering if you shouldn't approve what's in front of you as funding goes now, and his amendment comes up under the next item dealing with amendments to the budget. That's just a question I have and something for consideration. I would go back to what Mike Lesser said the last meeting, and that is you all have a process you went through, you made decisions, and to unwind those decisions could impact negatively those that met the criteria as it was in place for funding. And I think it has to be fair in every aspect. There's nothing easy about extending grants. I think what Ms. Stubblefield just said is absolutely correct. And as I understood conversation last week, that you all annually go through a process of underwriting how this grant program works. And I think it's also important to remember for the public that this grant program is unique to Topeka. It's not something that is just offered throughout the country. So when nonprofits, which I've been involved with many, look at their budgets, they shouldn't feel that they're guaranteed a funding because I got it last year and I'm a social service group. But on the other hand, the 4 that are left out this year, I think are definitely services that we need to find a way to support. And I want to pick up what Councilman Padilla said, process and purpose, and he's absolutely correct. That sometimes the purpose of the nonprofit is more important than the paperwork of the process. I totally agree with that. I think these 4 qualify for that in your consideration to find an additional $40,000. But let's redo this process and make it clear the unique nature it is to our community and how thankful we are to have it. And to follow the criteria, but maybe add additional criteria on purpose rather than how we fill the boxes out. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. So at this point in time, we have an amendment that has been made. Yes, Councilman Cohen.
I just had one additional question, Mayor. Thank you. I think it was something that I'd read that said you were going to be advocating for all 6 that didn't receive, not just the 4. And what happened to the other 2?
No, that was never my intent. That was something brought up at our meeting. It was brought up by someone on staff that if I was going to advocate for 4, I should advocate for all 6. That was their suggestion, not mine.
Okay, okay. So when we have a process, even like the Housing Trust Fund, what if one of the organizations didn't get funded that year? Are we going to change the rules then? And, just grant those that were below the line, so to speak, after we've run out of money? I guess if these 4 get an advocate, I think the other 2 need an advocate also. And if we're changing the rules, why don't we divide up the rest of the pie and everybody gets a piece? So what do you think about that, Councilman Padilla?
Well, it sounds like that would work, but if you recall from the testimony that city manager gave during our last meeting, he cautioned against such an act because it might invite people or organizations who felt that as long as they filled out an application, they would get something and there would be no measurements whatsoever. My argument has never been that there should not be some measurements or some accountability. It's the process in giving those numbers for the more clerical, as I would call them, score sheets rather than the outcomes score sheets, because looking at those, for, their outcomes, I believe, outweigh any error in a deadline or information left out accidentally. So my advocacy is specific because those are the ones that have always met the criteria before or previous year, and the numbers changed on them, and that happens for everybody, and that's fair. But I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. It's been discussed that, and I've asked that we continue to meet throughout the year to look at the process so that we refine it, and it still continues to be a way to gauge the success of programs and their reporting of the programs, but that it's done in a way that doesn't close our eye to what they are actually doing in the community. So my advocacy is specific in this area, but the other two that were mentioned, I think, they're new programs and had no history, and their scoring level was considerably different or less than the four that I have mentioned.
Mayor, if I may.
Absolutely, Councilman Cohen.
I think that if those from Sole Reason and the Midland Hospice would come up here, they would have just as big a heart tugging stories as the other organizations do. Perhaps maybe we should look into having, since these are all the essential services, perhaps maybe they need to be under the grandfathered in group instead of in the free-for-all group, and maybe something to entertain for, later this fall when we organize for the next year. Okay, that's all I had. Thanks.
Thank you, and thank you for making that comment, Councilmember Cohen, because that's one of the points that I was going to make tonight. I think that as somebody that loves the procedure that we have in place, there's just some of the items that we have that we are funding that we have decided that their importance is so crucial that there is a unique set of needs that we do have to support. And I think that maybe as the committee meets to talk about process for the next grant cycle, one of the things is that we should consider is taking a look at what the needs are and allocating a small portion that will go specifically to these organizations as long as they can show that they are still producing and providing their financial reports, because of course we wouldn't want to give funds to an organization that is not seeing seniors, right? But it's still out there. So I think that that's a great conversation for this committee to have when you meet later on in the process. And I look forward to seeing how this committee is going to work on the procedure so that next year, when we have these discussions, we maybe have a more standardized process. Councilman Jensen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This process cannot continue. Tonight, we are voting to invalidate and forever nullify this ever being used again in the city of Topeka, because there's absolutely nothing that says if we override this tonight, we can't do it again, and we won't. So there is absolutely no reason for anyone to ever complete this process again if they know they can just come to the council and lobby to have it overridden. Now, having said that, I wholeheartedly agree in funding these agencies. I think they do excellent work in the community and they're well deserving of it, with the work they've currently done. But voting to approve this is voting to forever torpedo this. That's the gravity of the situation. Having said that, I also don't agree with this process. And in the time I served on that committee, we had lengthy discussions about why we even do a grant process for what are, in many cases, very crucial social services. So my recommendation is that all of these go out for bid in the same way we bid getting a road project fixed. We have specific needs in the community, and I want to kick it out and see who can do that better than the government. I would lobby that indeed some of these social service organizations could absolutely provide better senior care than can the government. So let's bid it out, and let them address the specific needs. It's the same allocation process, or I shouldn't say it's the same allocation process. They would get allocated essentially the same amount now. The amount wouldn't change. We just wouldn't need this process that we are going to continue apparently to override again and again. That also gives us the option to do a 2 or 3 year contract. Having people come back again and again every single year to do essentially the same thing, to me, I struggle with that. Some of these programs, it's hard to spin up in a single calendar year and actually produce results, especially something new. You want to grow a program at the senior center? Okay, well, you've got basically less than a year to get that funding, get someone hired, get the program going, and produce results before you're required to start filling out paperwork for the same process again for next year. I struggle with some of that. So I would love to see us be able to tell LULAC, you're going to be funded for 3 years as long as you stay within these deliverables on a contract. To me, I'm not understanding why we're forcing them to do an ever-changing grant process that we seem to tinker with year after year. And then, I've been on the council for 4 years now, and it seems like each year there's heartburn over this process. And all of the members that have worked on it have done the absolute best they can. This is one of the most gut-wrenching decisions you will make on this council ever. Some of the hardest times I had was when I was on that committee trying to make the right decision with the resources we had, because if you talk about the things that affect people's lives, this is among the top of those things. So I will vote to approve this, fully knowing that I am torpedoing this process for the rest of time, and I'm proud to do so, because I think it's time to move beyond asking them to come back groveling year after year and look at long-term contracts with these providers that are out there doing the work in the community that we need, and to make sure that we're doing it with the best folks and delivering the best product. And I think a competitive bid process with multi-year contracts is absolutely a better way to do that than a grant program. Thank you.
Councilman Mays, will be followed by Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with a lot of what's been said so far. I do agree with what Councilman Cohen said about how there is a process, and we followed it to get to this point. I agree with Councilman Padilla that a lot of that these 4 entities do deserve some funding. I agree with Councilman Jensen that this process is significantly flawed, and we need to reevaluate how we do this, why we do this, and he is 100% correct that by approving these tonight, if we approve these, that is, that we're kind of throwing everything out, the rules. So I think we need to take a hard look at it in the near future, so that when this comes back around in a few months, we're not back here having the same conversation. Thank you.
Okay, I'm in a unique situation, and I'm going to abstain from the vote because I'm involved with Sole Reason. And as Councilman Cohen said, when I was on that committee, it was, I am so sorry, but this is the process, because I didn't want to have people come back year after year and go, well, but you did this, but you did that. On the other side of the fence now, because I wrote this grant and I transposed 2 things so we don't get the funding. So I'm like, I was like, but is it a good agency? Yep. Do they deserve the funding as much as anybody else? Yep. Did I mess up the grant? Yep. So I'm kind of, on this side of the fence, it's like, oh my gosh, fund all 6. But along with, Councilmember Cohen, it is a process, and if you mess it up, I'm so sorry you messed it up. But I do agree with you, if there's another way to do this, we need to do that. Thank you.
Councilwoman Ortiz?
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to understand, so the city manager is going to find the funding, is that correct? Out of the 2019? Is that correct?
City manager.
Councilwoman Ortiz, based on the way the motion has been made, I would have to look in 19 or 20 to find the funding in order to be able to provide the $40,000, the $10,000 per organization. So that would be my charge, and so then I would begin to look through that process in order to be able to do so.
Then what if he can't?
Then the funding would not be provided.
So I guess that's my my concern is, what if you can only find 20? I mean, you should be able to find it.
Yes. Yes,
I
ma'am.
understand, I believe so.
Right.
Out
And
of this-
I believe that I can. Yes, that should not be an issue, given that we have just shy of 18 months in order to do so. But obviously, I can tell you that I'm still currently working on a $900,000 debt, roughly, to finish 19. So I can't say for sure that I'm going to be able to find it in 19. I'm still dealing with that, and we're making progress, but it's not a guarantee that it's going to be there in 19. We've had in the past, we've had money left over, but it's not a guarantee, and that's why, barring making a hard decision as to what you want to cut for 40,000, this is the best way in order to do that. And so I think, but I understand the desire to be able to fund that, and if you approve this, that would be the instructions that I would have, is to make every effort possible, and I will do so.
What if he can only find half of it? Then what?
Councilman
I mean,
Padilla.
do we have an order of, I don't want to see any of them closed, I don't. But that was just my concern, because I know.
Well, if, the way I read it is that if the money is available, and that's a big if, that each would receive an amount of 10,000. That would mean if there's only 20,000, then there aren't going to be any funds available for the other two. So it's either or. Either we have the funds available, because then we get into that, well, who would get it and who would not. And I think that, I don't want to go down that road, but I think that's a fair way to do it if the city manager is able, by not increasing the budget and looking at anything that he can find in the way of cost savings that could be used for that. And that's why I worded it, if such funding can be secured. If it can be, then then these four will benefit from that by receiving the $10,000 each. If they can't be funded, then we go back to, they won't be funded for 2020.
If I may,
And the only
If we could hear city manager, and then we'll come back to.
one correction I'll
Yes.
make is, if you look at the motion says not to exceed 10,000 per each. So I would then have judgment to be able to make a decision relative to how I would divide whatever funding I found before the end of that year.
Councilwoman Ortiz, please.
so if he comes up with 20, then we're not going to use the 20? So it's either all or none? Is that what you're saying?
No, it's, the guidance is given to try and fund them as best possible with whatever money can be, but not authorized beyond 10,000 per each.
Right, and I understand that, but
So-
I'm concerned with, if we only come up with 20, how are we going to, who's going to be funded? Because we have 4.
As, Madam Mayor,
Councilman Padilla.
if I may, as I understand, city manager, if only 20,000 is found, then he can fund the 4,
Right.
an even amount
Right.
across the board, but it would not exceed 10,000 per.
Oh, so that's how you would do it?
That's how I would do it, and that's how
Well,
I would.
this is why I'm asking, because I want to know what I'm
understand that.
voting on.
Right. No, and I think I look at that as being my charge, is that you have not placed one above the other. So whatever funding would become available, I would treat each as the same, and then we would just divide up whatever funding level amount I could by the 4, since you haven't said, fund this one first, then fund that one, then fund this one. Since that's not part of the motion, therefore I would just fund them all equally with whatever funds I found in that time frame.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councilwoman Hiller.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a question for each of you, and then a couple of observations, if I may. Councilman Padilla, is your thought, if this 40,000 were added, that that would therefore increase our annual allocation for social services by 40,000 every year?
That's not my intent. And that's part of what I want to happen during this year with this committee, looking at how we would proceed, and if, in fact, some suggestions have been made by Councilman Jensen, and I have heard others, about whether or not the membership on that committee should rotate every year, that maybe somebody should be retained at least a couple of years so they are familiar with the process, or even ask another organization to do the process for us. I understand that that used to happen for the city, and then the city brought it back.
Right.
And all of those suggestions, I think, should be a good discussion by the council and with the committee and people involved, the organizations involved. But no, I did not want to set anything in place permanent as funding.
Just wanted to check, because if it is awarded for 2020, then it would add the total. Everybody just looks back to what we did last year, right? So it would add 40,000 to the package, and we'd have to understand if it wasn't going to stay, that would put a squeeze on these other organizations, obviously, and the ability to fund them at the level they've been funded before or were funded for this year. So I just wanted to check and see what your intent was. My question for actually the whole committee, but Chair Cohen in particular, is my understanding is that the cutoff was 88% last year, and my experience with that committee has been, it's been up to the committee, that the council approves, you know, what the priorities are, what the priority areas are, what the grant sizes will be, and so on, but that the actual decision of how to spread the funding is up to the committee. So why was it that you all, was there an intentional decision, and if you could explain why the cutoff was set at 90 rather than 88, just as a for instance?
City Manager?
Sasha, correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding from discussions with her and what's been presented was that as the scores were evaluated and the amount of money they were requesting compared to the amount of money that was available, those that scored 90, that's as far as the money went. So the amount of money that was available for those that scored 90, anyone that scored below that was not available for funding. They didn't qualify for funding based on that score. Does that sound? Yes. So that's,
okay.
So that was the cutoff based on the money available. That's as far as it went. After that,
we didn't arbitrarily draw a line, sorry, Mayor. We didn't arbitrarily draw a line at 90. The money ran out at that
the
amount.
money ran out based on some calculations. I mean, I sat on that committee in the early years, and the mayor's nodding. You know, what we did was looked at, in the past, at kind of whether there was a natural cutoff in the quality of the applications, and actually the committee made the choice how to do the actual distribution of the funds once the scores came in. So I'm not aware that there's anything in the guidelines that would have said it had to be done that way. And the staff did hand out a run on how it would go if the threshold were dropped to 88. So I just wondered, because it sounds like, I tried to read through the minutes, it sounds like you all did kind of double check all the scoring. You were satisfied that the scoring was correct?
I'm satisfied.
Okay. So the only issue would have been the cutoff.
Councilwoman Hiller, we're all new to this process, so we're all figuring it out. We're all figuring it out. So a lot of these direct questions I may not have the answer for, because this is our first time around.
And I understand, okay. I didn't mean it to sound harsh, but I knew that the cutoff had been the discretion of the committee in the past, was not locked in by what the council has voted on in terms of guidelines in the past. And so,
okay, well,
just checking.
We have 2 council members in line to speak, but city manager would like to also make a quick comment.
I'll be very brief. Excuse me, Councilman. One thing I want to comment is when I said that the money ran out related to the scores for 90, one thing to remember is that it wasn't giving the full amount of 25,000 requests. They reduced, as the committee, they already reduced what was being asked for by the agencies, even giving the 90s the money, those that scored 90 or above. So we need to be aware they didn't just go 25, 25, 25, and then the money ran out and the 88s weren't funded. They reduced everyone's portion. So I want to make sure to clarify that.
Councilman Lesser to be followed by Councilman Mays.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The only thing that I would want to point out is I think we kind of have two separate issues here. I think the first thing, I will support Councilman Padilla's motion, but I don't think that this is the correct place to have it. I think and correct me if I'm wrong, but my opinion is we did go through the process. We are going to go through and approve the results of the committee that have been brought here, and that is what's in front of the council. If we're looking for money and agreeing to do this, which, like I said, I will support this, but this to me is a budget amendment versus a social service committee amendment. The reason I ask that is the amount of money that we have for social service committee is what it is. And so if we're going to find $40,000, we're finding that somewhere else within the budget to say for this one time we're going to do this. So there again, I don't think it's appropriate for this to be a motion on this actual agenda item. It would be my opinion.
City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilman Lesser, actually as staff, we debated that as well. Is this appropriate here or is it appropriate in the next item? What I looked at was the fact that this item isn't a hard decision related to the budget. In other words, it's not taking something away for sure from the budget. It is a direction to try and find. And so it could probably be done in either spot of the agenda. And so we ended up just choosing here because this was more related to the topic of the item, and so we chose here. But you're right, we could have looked at doing it at the next agenda item as well.
If I can respond.
Absolutely.
And I don't have a huge issue. I think by going forward and approving this as it is does uphold the credibility of the committee process and the credibility of what we are doing this year. As we then are looking forward in the future, as we said as a committee, we're going to look at the process, we're going to do all those, but it does keep the credibility of the process in place if we were to approve the additional funding in, as we said, the budget amendment. That would just be my preference.
Sure. Understood.
Councilman Mays.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to sort of rewind the conversation back to a certain exchange that was made earlier with regard to how do you decide who gets what amount of money. And I know the city manager said that he would divide it equally, but I think it's important that we maybe try and codify that. So I think it might be appropriate if Councilman Padilla agrees with it, making maybe a friendly amendment to add the word equal into the second to last line so that it says each would receive an equal amount not to exceed $10,000, just to make sure that that actually goes into the ordinance.
Second.
So I think that it would have to
Well,
go
he
from
just
the
has to
individual
agree.
he has to agree. It's just a friendly amendment.
I would agree.
Okay. So at this point in time, Deputy Mayor.
I thought it did occur to me on our priorities. So our priorities in that committee, one of them is for the senior citizens to provide for that service. If we don't provide for that service, then what is that doing to our priorities that we have set? Do you just go, oops, we didn't meet our priority? Or how should we handle that?
Councilwoman Hiller.
Thank you, Mayor. Fishing here real quickly. There were 6 priorities in the charge, and just to pick up some of the broader discussion about what's important, if applications don't fit into one of the priority categories, they don't get considered at all. So everybody, there are 24 agencies on here, and every one of them met the standard to be considered in one of our priority areas, and those are senior citizen, neighborhood-based programming, medical assistance for low-income individuals, programs for at-risk youth, emergency housing and utility assistance, neighborhood and independent living-based services for persons with severe and persistent mental illness, and support services for residents who are non-English speaking. Those were adopted by the council, and every single one of these 24 agencies met at least one of those categories. And in fact, 2 of those that are funded, that are in the committee's recommendation, are for senior citizens, aside from the ones that we're discussing tonight. There's the medical-related program, the SHIC program through JAAA, and also the Jayhawk Area Agency on Aging, and I might have missed some, and certainly seniors are eligible for some of those medical assistance programs as well. So the system is working as far as attracting those priorities and addressing those priorities and then weighting them. So, and we have, just so everybody knows, I mean, there have been agencies go off, come on, and go off for a year and come back a year later with an improved score that got them back into the mix. So it's tough. I really struggled with it too, but the council took it on as a direct responsibility and put it in a council committee, because farming it out to a third party or to a citizen review where they might not be familiar with social services or the management kinds of things didn't seem to have worked. It's not that we can't choose to do something again, but that's why, what was it, 6 years ago, something like that, it went into a council committee. So it's hard to make those choices. I guess for me, as I look then at the decisions that were made, if the committee really hammered the scoring and felt comfortable with the scoring, then to me, the decision is then go ahead and drop the threshold and go ahead and fund them. And I'll tell you a couple of reasons why. I've run a nonprofit myself. It is very thoughtful to say, well, let's go see if we have some money, and maybe by the end of December or some other time we'll find some. But that means those agencies don't know. It makes it hard for them to go ask somebody else for that money. It makes it hard to plan. They're kind of in limbo about it, and I'm not sure that's really the best favor to anybody involved. If we, as a council, we don't want to challenge the choice of priorities or the choice of agencies or scoring, I would suggest, but we could adjust that threshold. And I know that some folks didn't want to change the allocations to the other agencies, but that would make it a firm commitment to all of the agencies that scored 88 or over today, and they would all know what they have, and we would not have to go through these other machinations. So I'm not used to layers of proposals, but I am willing to propose an alternate amendment or a substitute amendment to simply approve this with the 88% or the 88-point threshold.
Let's first go to Deputy Mayor, to be followed by Councilmember Lesser.
My question is, will that catch all of them? Who does that catch, the 88?
That'll catch the 4 that are
all 4
under discussion.
Catches the 4.
Councilmember Hiller, if you will allow Councilmember Lesser to speak, and then we will come back to you. Councilmember Lesser.
So what you're telling me then, Councilman Hiller, is you're making a decision to make this motion. You haven't been at any of the meetings. You're looking at the information that you have just on this, and that's the due diligence that you're going to do to make this recommendation. I'm asking a question.
Councilwoman Hiller.
It would be respecting all of the work that you all did. It sounds like you were given an instruction that you had to make the allocations a certain way once the scores came in. That has not historically been a hard and fast requirement, so it was a way to respect all the work that you did, but recalibrated slightly.
So, yes, Councilmember Lesser.
I think that you're responsible. I think there's a lot of time that's put in by staff, the formula. I think we're talking about 4 entities that we also do have a solution, but we're also talking about all these other entities that have been awarded already and told what the allocations were. And to me, it feels like we're just trying to smooth this over, make it everybody happy and go down the road. And I think it's irresponsible. We had a process. We followed the process. Unfortunately, there's winners and losers. And we need to, I feel, hold to that process, and we can change this process down the road after the shortcomings, and I think we should. And Councilman Padilla has brought a motion that is appropriate, that will solve some of this issue with these other entities and funding it, but to just off the cuff say, hey, boom, we're going to drop this 1 point, and because this is what it does, I don't think it is quite frankly, a little insulting to the time that the committee and the staff and everybody put in doing it, quite frankly. I'll be honest with you.
If I could just,
If we could have Deputy Mayor speak and then Councilwoman Hiller. Deputy Mayor.
With all due respect, the process wasn't followed because the process when the 3 years I was on, we chose what the allocation was. If we decide, and then we asked for more money. So if we wanted it at 88, we would just say, hey, city, we need 500,000 because we want to fund them at 88%. We didn't stick with whatever this amount was. In addition, I think what Councilmember Hiller is saying, then we meet our priorities. If you lower this to 88, we then hit our priorities and we don't ignore them. So, yes, I mean, the process was followed to a degree, but I don't think you knew that. I don't think you knew you could do that.
And what I would ask of the body at this point in time, it seems like we're getting into the details on the process, and this is not what we came here to do today. The process, the perspective of the process is of the committees. And I think that one of the difficulties of this committee especially is the fact that you have brand new members of the committee coming together to work on what they understand the process to be. And I think that at this point in time, rather than us, which I very much dislike, making policy on the fly, we honor the work that the committee has done. The committee has presented a recommendation to the body. I think that everybody has had ample opportunity to share what their perspective is, and we allow the committee to have the opportunity to go back to the committee, and within the committee, the council can provide all of the feedback that we would like to provide to the committee before their meeting, so that as they are looking at the process next time, they also have the perspective of the council members that have participated in it. But what I would like to call the body at this point in time is we do have a motion, and we have a second for a motion. And in summation, I will say this is why more than likely there is no other municipality that has grant programs. Because it is a very difficult process. And we have different philosophies on how to do this. And we have citizens that we're trying to serve. And when it comes to it coming back to the body, it does become a political process, which is what we did not want it to be in the first place. And it doesn't matter how much we pull it into a committee. It's going to become a political process because we are using public dollars that automatically include the public to do grant funding, which is typically the work of a foundation, which is at the point in time in which we have to determine, based on our priorities, for the committee to make the determination on how those allocations are going to be made. Because now the committee has the sage advice that this council has provided you in this process. So unless there's any other item pertaining to the amendment that Councilmember Padilla has made, and there is no other new comments, I would invite everybody to consider, now that we have a motion and a second, considering the vote. Deputy Mayor.
However, my question still stands. What does that do to our priorities? I mean, I don't know. What do cities do then if you don't hit your priority? You just do away with it? So my question still stands.
Deputy Mayor, if you recall, Councilwoman Hiller alluded to the fact that there was some senior funding that was being provided as part of the grantees that received funds.
Who was that to?
Jayhawk Area Agency on Aging, Jayhawk Area Agency SHIC, and there also is medical money. There are seniors that in the mental health programs and a number of the other ones.
It's just not the same.
It's not the same.
It's not exactly, but it's still providing some
service.
So, yes, Councilman Padilla.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Given Councilman Lesser's comments, I'm just procedurally, would it keep intact the integrity of the original committee recommendation to have made this under the budget? I know you said you had back and forth on where it should be, and it could be in either place. So if that's the case, then I would still go ahead and move forward. But I don't like the idea that it seems to be expressed that that it's like just torpedoing the recommendation altogether and the process altogether. That was never my intent. My intent has always been to review that process, not to torpedo it in total. And my intent has never been to take funds away from those who have already been awarded funds. So there's no penalty being suffered by those who have already been recommended for funding. So I just want to make sure that I'm in the right spot in this procedure in this point in time, or if it should be moved to the budget as an amendment, just to preserve that integrity of the work done by the committee.
May I make a remark, City Manager? Councilmember Padilla, I know that your intentions are honorable, but regardless of where you put this amendment, is going to torpedo the process. So thank you very much for your thoughtfulness and for your spirit of trying to uphold the process. But I think that regardless of where this amendment falls, it is still torpedoing the process. But thank you.
I'll make a comment. I think one of the things that I look at is with this amendment, we're doing it's basically a recommendation that we find. So you're saying the recommendation from the committee stands, but we also would like you to look for an additional $40,000 in order to move that, to fund these other organizations if you could. And so that's the way I look at that as coming as the change that this occurs. If you had said eliminate 40,000 specifically from another project and use that 40,000 to do that, we definitely need to be doing it in the budget amendment part. But by giving me the flexibility to pursue it at a later date, it is a little easier to do it at this point. But as I said, you could do it, as Councilman Lesser was saying. I definitely agree. We could be having this discussion in the, when I looked at it, I thought that the idea of what we were doing, the core purpose of this is looking at our social services. Doing the amendment at this point helps us to have the discussion regarding social service grants in general, and so that's why we looked at it being at this point in time. So there's valid points either way. Couldn't tell you either way. I just felt this is where we should discuss it.
Councilman Mays.
I'd like to call the question, Mayor.
Seeing no opposition. Oh, Councilman Jensen.
So I would like to clarify what the question is. I'm not aware that we actually have a motion to approve this, but yet we have an amendment. So I would just like some clarification on exactly what the question is.
The question is that before the approval of the social grant services is made, there is a request from Councilmember Padilla to ask the city manager to find $40,000 within either this year's budget or next year's budget to be equally allocated to the social service organizations that are in question.
Correct, but that would not be an amendment. This is a separate ask.
It's its own independent motion.
Okay.
But there was a friendly amendment made in it that states equal. That was not in the original language, so pardon me for that confusion.
Thank you.
Okay.
Can you let the clerk please read the motion just so that everyone's clear?
Read the action.
Okay, so move to approve the committee recommendation and request that the city manager review funding levels at the conclusion of 2019 and during 2020 to determine if sufficient resources are available to fund the 4 social service agencies that were unable to secure grants through the Social Service Grants Committee process in an amount not to exceed $40,000, and if so, to include this funding as part of the year-end budget ordinance. These 4 agencies are LULAC Senior Center, Pepin's Landing Senior Center, East Topeka Senior Center, and Communications Actions Latino Family Development Program, and each would receive an equal amount not to exceed $10,000 if such funding can be secured.
Okay, we have the motion. We have a second. At this point in time, we proceed by voting.
The amendment?
Yes, yeah, the amendment.
So,
It's just as freestanding.
Yeah, just the amendment.
Not according to the clerk.
this is,
Sound like it's together.
it's together.
What?
Apparently, so it's not just the document. It's a freestanding, so the way that the clerk read it was not a freestanding motion.
Yeah, it was.
No. It's a motion to approve.
No, it was a motion to approve the recommendation of the committee.
It's a motion to approve the committee's recommendation and try to find this additional funding.
Okay.
But nobody
We
ever
voted on
actually
2
made the
things
first
then,
motion,
or
or they didn't?
That's why I was trying
They
to
should
I thought we were going to vote only on the language that Councilman Padilla offered,
He introduced it.
but now we're voting also the language that the clerk provided. Would it be possible for us to do a vote first on the recommendation of Councilmember Padilla? Because that was the understanding I had.
That's how it should be.
Yeah.
Yeah, hold on just a second.
Should be the
If we didn't
amendment
have a motion.
and then the ordinance.
Okay. Okay, now you can go.
Okay, so the current motion is only
That's the
the
amendment.
language of Councilmember Padilla.
Yep.
And then we will have a subsequent vote to approve the recommendations of the committee. Okay, so we now vote on the Padilla motion.
Okay, we have 7 yes, council members Hiller and Cohen voting no.
7 having voting yes, the motion passes. At this point in time, do we have a motion for the approval of the committee report? We have a motion by Councilmember Chair Cohen. We have a second by Councilmember Padilla. Additional comments or questions? Seeing none, we proceed by voting on the recommendation of the committee. Oh,
Okay. Okay, we have 8 yes and Mrs. Clear abstaining.
8 having voting yes, the motion passes. At this point in time, I know that there's a lot of individuals that were waiting specifically for this motion, and they were gonna get up as soon as this passed, and it's close to 8 o'clock, and we typically have a 10-minute recess. So at this point in time, we will recess for a period not to exceed 10 minutes, and we will reconvene at 8:02.